Chosen one, stop whatever you are doing. That unresolved ache sitting quietly beneath your chest right now. The one you have learned to live around. It has a name. And today we are going to say it out loud. The enemy has been working overtime this week for one reason, and one reason only. He knows that the moment you understand what I am about to show you, the deepest wound in your life loses its power over you permanently. It all begins to unravel right now. The emotional cycles, the patterns you cannot seem to break, the relationships that keep ending the same way, the version of yourself you keep almost becoming but never quite reaching. But hear me clearly, this is not ending because of coincidence. It is ending because you were ready enough to be brought here today. Think back to this week. Maybe there was a conversation, a memory that surfaced without warning, something that reminded you of her and left you sitting with a feeling you could not fully name. Maybe it was something small, a tone of voice you used with someone you loved that stopped you cold because for a split second it sounded like hers. Or maybe you woke up recently with a heaviness that had no obvious origin, and somewhere beneath the silence, you knew it was connected to something older than anything happening in your life right now. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. The Holy Spirit did. This is a divine appointment that was written before the foundations of the earth were laid. You are standing at the threshold of the most important healing of your entire life. Stay until the very last second of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the revelation that reframes your entire origin story. I am going to walk you through the exact dynamic that has been operating in the background of every relationship, every decision, and every version of yourself you have tried to build. And at the end, I am going to give you a declaration that severs the invisible cord that has been pulling you backward every time you tried to move forward. Do not click away. Your future self, the healed one, the free one, the one who finally understands why they are the way they are, is standing on the other side of this message, begging you to stay. I know what the last several days have felt like. Something has been stirring beneath the surface. It is not quite grief, and it is not quite anger. It is something older, something that lives in the part of you that was formed before you had words for what was happening to you. Maybe you have been doing the work, reading the books, going to therapy, doing the journaling, saying the affirmations, and yet something keeps returning. Some pattern, some fear, some way of shrinking or overextending, some inability to receive love without bracing for its withdrawal. And you have started to wonder quietly, in the privacy of your own mind, whether this is just who you are. That is the lie the enemy has planted. He has been whispering a very specific deception in the space between your thoughts. He is telling you that the reason you cannot seem to fully heal is because something is fundamentally broken inside of you. He is replaying moments in your mind, that time you pushed someone away who loved you, that time you stayed too long in something that was hurting you, that time you chose silence when you needed to speak or spoke when you needed to be still. And he is building a case. He is filing it under your name and labeling it permanent. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Psalm 147:3 says, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." Listen to that word, binds. This is not a casual comfort. This is a medical declaration. The God of the universe is described here as a physician actively working on the specific places inside of you that were broken before you even understood that breaking was happening. This is not a promise for someone else. This is the verdict over your life right now, in this season, in this wound. You are not broken. You are in the process of being bound. The heaviness you have been carrying is not evidence of your failure to heal. It is evidence that the healing has reached the deepest layer. The pressure you feel is not punishment. It is the sensation of something that has been infected for decades, finally being drawn to the surface so it can be removed. You thought the wound was about her choices, but the revelation I am bringing you today is this: it was never about what she did or did not do. It is about what you concluded about yourself because of it. And that conclusion, the one you formed as a child, that conclusion has been running your life from the shadows. That is what ends today, not because you finally figured out how to be strong enough to push past it, but because the Most High has scheduled this moment of clarity as the turning point in your story. You did not stumble onto this message. You were led here, and now the work begins. Type it with the part of you that has been waiting to finally be seen. What you concluded about yourself, that is the root. Not the wound on the surface that everyone can see. Not the behavior pattern that your therapist helped you name. Not even the relationship that broke you open and left you reeling. The root is a far more insidious and personal thing. It is the verdict you quietly handed down against yourself in the echoing silence after the storm of the past. It was a judgment rendered in the secret chambers of your heart, a conviction forged in the crucible of your pain, and that deeply embedded verdict has been acting as an unyielding, unbreakable law in your inner world ever since, governing your actions, shaping your perceptions, and dictating the boundaries of your possibilities. It is the unspoken decree that silently directs the entire architecture of your being, often without your conscious awareness, dictating what you believe you deserve, what you believe you are capable of, and what kind of love you believe is available to you. If what you just heard named something you have been carrying without words for a very long time, type 777 in the comments right now. 777 is the seal of divine completion, the signal that what God began in you is not abandoned, it is being finished. Type it and let heaven mark this moment in your story. Many are called, but few receive the instructions. If your spirit is burning right now, the chosen one's blueprint holds the roadmap God designed specifically for people like you. It includes the complete audiobook, so you can carry this revelation with you wherever you go, plus a powerful bonus, activating your prophet mantle for those who sense God is preparing them to speak with authority. Find it in the first pinned comment below, available for a limited time only. Now, let us go deeper, much deeper, because this is precisely where most healing journeys stop short, leaving a lingering ache, a hollow promise. People embark on the arduous work of identifying the wound. They meticulously name the moment it struck, tracing the precise genesis of their pain. They cry the torrent of tears that have been dammed up for years, a necessary release. And they often extend forgiveness to the person who inflicted the initial hurt. Then, they wait. They wait with bated breath, with hopeful expectation, for the miraculous freedom that was so fervently promised, the liberation they so desperately crave. But when the same insidious fear creeps back into their nights, when the familiar pattern of self-sabotage or relational discord re-emerges, perhaps disguised in a different relationship with a different face, a profound and debilitating conclusion settles within them. They have failed. They conclude that healing is not for them, that they are somehow irrevocably broken, the sole exception to the universal promise of restoration. But here is the profound truth of what is actually happening in that moment of despair. You did not fail the healing. Instead, you courageously, diligently healed the symptom, the outward manifestation, without ever truly touching the subterranean root, the hidden wellspring from which all those symptoms draw their persistent, debilitating life. You have been diligently tending to the visible consequences, mistaking the shadow for the substance, unaware of the deeper, unseen force at play. Think of it this way: visualize a magnificent tree, once vibrant and robust, now tragically diseased. With a gardener's diligent hand, you might meticulously cut off every visible dead branch, pruning away the decay. For a season, the tree may indeed appear healthier, its outward form renewed, a temporary illusion of vitality. But if the insidious disease lives not in the branches, but deep within its intricate, unseen root system, it will inevitably unstoppably return every single time. The leaves will yellow again, the fruit will wither, the branches will once more succumb to the creeping blight. Not because the tree is cursed by some cosmic decree or inherently flawed in its essence. It returns because the very source of its affliction, the hidden heart of the problem, was never truly addressed. You, in your earnest efforts, have been tirelessly pruning branches, tending to the symptoms that appear on the surface. But what God, the divine botanist, is asking you to do right now in this sacred, transformative moment is to allow Him to reach down, to penetrate the very earth of your being, and to tend to the root itself. As Jeremiah 17:8 reminds us, a blessed person is like a tree planted by the water, sending out its roots by the stream, unafraid of heat, its leaves always green, unburdened by drought, never failing to bear fruit. This profound imagery contrasts sharply with the diseased tree, highlighting the critical importance of a healthy, divinely connected root system. Your true health, your lasting fruitfulness, depends not on superficial adjustments, but on a deep, radical excavation of what lies beneath. Someone is still pruning branches right now, still returning to the same books, the same therapists, the same practices, doing everything right, and still finding that something deeper does not shift, still wondering in the quiet of their most honest moments whether healing is actually available to them, or whether they are simply the exception to the promise. That person has not yet found a message that goes below the symptom and names the root. This mission exists to reach them. Through the link in the description or the pinned comment, you can sow a seed into the work that sends this word further, not into a channel, into the lives of people still mistaking the shadow for the substance, still pruning branches while the root remains untouched. A coffee, a one-time gift, a monthly place in the inner circle that keeps this mission moving. Every level carries the same declaration that someone else's root-level healing matters enough to plant toward. As you release this seed, bring with you the specific verdict you have been holding against yourself. Not a list, just the one conclusion you formed in the quiet aftermath. The one that has been running things from the shadows longer than you want to admit. Place it inside this act of releasing, and trust that the God who is the divine botanist is already reaching toward the root of it, in you and in the person this seed is about to find. What has been infected for decades is being drawn to the surface now, and it is not as deep as the silence has made it feel. And that root, that foundational bedrock of your internal operating system, is a belief, not a fleeting thought, but a single, deeply embedded, often unconscious belief that solidified and took hold in the earliest moments of wounding, particularly within the context of your formative relationship with her, your mother, or the primary maternal figure in your life. This belief, like an ancient powerful spell whispered into your subconscious, articulates several core narratives. It whispers, "I am not safe to be fully known," causing you to guard your true self with an almost impenetrable vigilance, fearing exposure as a prelude to abandonment or rejection. It asserts, "Love is something I must constantly earn and meticulously maintain through ceaseless performance, or it will inevitably be withdrawn, trapping you in an exhausting cycle of people-pleasing, overachieving, and an unending quest for external validation." It declares with a crushing finality, the real version of me, the unguarded, the unpolished, the unmanaged, spontaneous version of my soul, is either too much for others to handle, or paradoxically, not enough to truly be cherished, or perhaps even both at the same time. This internal conflict creates a devastating split where your authentic self is deemed unacceptable, and every single relationship you have subsequently entered since that formative period, you have unwittingly brought this powerful, unspoken belief into it, like a hidden contract, a secret clause in the terms of engagement. If those three beliefs just landed somewhere specific inside you, if one of them in particular felt less like a description and more like a confession, Type 444 in the comments right now. 444 is the number of divine protection and foundational restoration. Heaven is building something new over the very ground where that belief took root. Type it and receive that protection over this specific layer of your healing. You did not choose this belief consciously. No child would willingly select such a burden. You inherited it, absorbing it deeply into your nascent spirit in the myriad moments when she was emotionally unavailable, or bewilderingly unpredictable, or relentlessly critical, or profoundly emotionally absent, or perhaps so completely consumed by the suffocating weight of her own unhealed wounds that she simply could not see, let alone adequately respond to, the profound needs and emergent wounds within you. It was like living in a house where the air felt perpetually thin, and the light always seemed to dim just when you needed it most, leaving your spirit to fashion its own survival creed in the shadows. Before we continue, if this message is confirming something your spirit already suspected, but could never fully articulate, hit the like button right now, not for the video, as a signal to yourself that you are no longer looking away from what has been living in the shadows. That signal matters. But here is where the journey goes even deeper, revealing a layer of profound insight that most people, trapped in their pain and anger, miss entirely. She did not give you that belief with malicious intent, nor with conscious cruelty. In the vast majority of cases, she simply gave you what she herself had received, a painful inheritance passed down through generations. The very wound that now resides and aches within you was, in all likelihood, living and festering within her first, a silent legacy of unaddressed pain. She was not a monster, a caricature of evil designed to inflict suffering. She was, in the deepest sense, a wounded woman, a soul who had not yet encountered the profound, liberating healing that is, in this very moment, reaching out to touch you. And the truly transformative, unlocking moment arrives when you are able to hold both of these seemingly contradictory truths simultaneously within your heart. That what she did, or what she was unable to do, shaped you profoundly, irrevocably, leaving undeniable imprints on your soul. And concurrently, that she too was shaped, limited, and wounded by what she received, or failed to receive in her own formative years. When this dual understanding dawns, something deep within your spirit begins to unlock, to release a freedom that no amount of mere anger, no torrent of tears, no intellectualized grief could ever, by itself, release. It is like finding the master key to a cage you did not even realize you were in, because for the first time you see the bars for what they are. Not an intentional trap, but part of a larger tragic lineage. Someone in your life is still inside that cage without knowing it is a cage. They are managing their life around the bars, building their world inside the dimensions of something they were never meant to stay in. Share this message with them right now. Not because you have the answers, because this word might be the first time someone names what they have been living around. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do for someone is send them to the place where their wound finally gets a name. This profound insight is emphatically not an invitation to minimize what happened to you, to diminish the reality of your suffering. Do not hear me suggesting, even for a moment, that the impact of those wounds was not real, or that your profound pain somehow requires qualification, justification, or a reduction in its legitimate depth. What I am saying, with every fiber of my being, is that truly understanding the origin and the generational context of the wound is the powerful disarming force that completely dismantles the pervasive, crippling shame that the wound itself produced, because the deepest, most insidious lie the enemy plants in the fertile, often chaotic aftermath of maternal wounding is not merely that you are broken, flawed, or damaged beyond repair. No, the truly venomous lie, the one that digs its roots deepest into your psyche, is that you somehow deserved it, that in some unfathomable way, your inherent neediness, your exquisite sensitivity, your profound human hunger for connection and unconditional love was, in fact, the fundamental problem, that you were the one who was too much, too demanding, too vulnerable. And if you allow yourself to be brutally honest, quietly, privately, courageously honest with your own soul, that insidious lie has profoundly shaped the way you instinctively shrink, dimming your light and making yourself smaller in rooms where your spirit yearns to expand, to blossom, to shine its true brilliance. It has sculpted the ingrained habit of apologizing for simply taking up space, for having needs, for daring to exist authentically. And perhaps most tragically, it has shaped the cunning, often unconscious ways in which you sabotage genuine intimacy, pushing away connection the very moment it draws close enough to actually see, truly see, the vulnerable, authentic, unvarnished you. This lie creates a constant internal tension, a battle between the truth of who you are and the false narrative you have been conditioned to believe, keeping you perpetually on guard. Coming up in just a moment, we will confront the hidden agreement that has been giving that lie its immense suffocating power. And once you truly see it, once its shadowy influence is brought into the light, you will understand with chilling clarity why sheer willpower alone could never ever break its hold over you. But first, before we dive into that crucial revelation, this foundational truth absolutely has to land in the deepest chambers of your heart, settling there as an irrefutable anchor of compassion for yourself. You did not choose the wound. You did not consciously invite the pain pattern that subsequently unfurled through your life. You certainly did not deliberately design the intricate, often sophisticated defense mechanisms that spontaneously formed in the overwhelming, terrifying absence of safe, consistent love. Your nervous system, that remarkable instinctual system hardwired for survival, was simply doing precisely what nervous systems are designed to do in moments of perceived threat or profound lack. It was surviving. The guardedness that became your second skin, the hypervigilance that constantly scanned every horizon for danger, the tendency to meticulously analyze every nuance of every relationship for the slightest sign of rejection before it could catch you off guard and leave you shattered. None of that, absolutely none of it, is weakness. On the contrary, that is the ingenious, resilient architecture of a brilliant child who learned very early and very painfully that the tender landscape of love was not a safe, consistent place to rest, to be vulnerable, to simply exist. And in response to that early trauma, you built an entire, elaborate personality around managing that profound insecurity, crafting a masterful facade so convincingly that most people who know you have absolutely no idea it even exists, let alone defines your inner world. You learn to be exceptionally strong, to project an aura of unshakable competence. You became fiercely capable, often excelling in ways that masked your inner turmoil. You may have even learned to be the indispensable one, the empathetic anchor who tirelessly holds space for everyone else's pain and struggles. Because in the twisted logic of your wounded past, as long as you were desperately needed, as long as you were indispensable, you simply could not be abandoned. This was a survival masterpiece, a profound act of self-preservation, however costly its long-term effects. This complex defense system, born of necessity, stands as a testament not to your flaws, but to your fierce, undeniable will to endure, to survive in an environment that often felt perilous and unpredictable. Your strength was a shield forged in fire. But like all shields, it eventually began to obscure as much as it protected. But here is the profoundly uncomfortable truth, the part no one ever truly wants to hear, the realization that often rattles the very foundations of our self-perception. That very version of strength, that meticulously constructed edifice of self-sufficiency, ultimately became its own insidious prison. The very coping mechanism, the brilliant defensive strategy that protected your tender, vulnerable child self from overwhelming hurt, ironically morphed into the towering wall that is now in your adult life. effectively keeping out the very love, connection, and intimacy that your adult self is so desperately yearning to receive. This is a fundamental, almost spiritual paradox. You cannot simultaneously protect yourself from the potential of being hurt and remain genuinely open to the transformative, often messy vulnerability of being deeply loved. Those two postures, those two opposing ways of being, simply cannot coexist within the same heart in the same moment. They are mutually exclusive, and until you deeply viscerally understand that this formidable wall, this fortress of self-protection, was expertly built for a specific season of danger that has long since passed, you will continue to expend an immense amount of precious energy maintaining it, often against people and circumstances who never intended to harm you, but simply desire to see, know, and cherish the authentic person hidden behind its formidable shadow. The wall, once your savior, now stands as a barrier to your deepest longings. It is the cage built from your own desperate need for safety, and now it keeps you from the freedom you crave. This brings us, with unavoidable clarity, to the hidden agreement. And make no mistake, this is the real seismic turning point in your journey toward authentic healing and liberation. Because somewhere along the tortuous path of your past, without ever fully realizing it, without a conscious decision being made in the light of day, you entered into a profound spiritual agreement with the wound itself. You made an unconscious vow. Perhaps you never articulated it out loud, never whispered it to another soul. Perhaps you did not even think it consciously, did not form the words in your waking mind. But in the harrowing aftermath of the pain, in those desolate moments when the last tears dried and a steely resolve began to set in, deep within the quiet, guarded chambers of your heart, you said something to yourself that, at the time, felt like undeniable wisdom, an astute strategy for future survival. You declared, "Never again." You vowed, "I will not need anyone like that again. I will never put myself in a position of such vulnerability." You fiercely proclaimed, "I will be enough on my own, completely self-sufficient, utterly independent." And that vow, born of profound pain and a desperate longing for self-preservation, which felt like a shield against future hurt, was actually in its spiritual essence a solemn covenant with isolation. It was an unspoken yet incredibly powerful agreement that effectively declared to the divine, God, "I do not trust you to send me safe love, to provide for my deepest relational needs, so I will manage this incredibly important, vulnerable aspect of my life myself. I will control the variables. I will build my own defenses. I will become my own source of love and security." This vow, though made in innocence and pain, subtly challenged the very benevolence of God. To grasp the full weight and spiritual significance of this agreement, let us turn our gaze to the ancient story of Jacob wrestling in the dark as recorded in Genesis 32. Jacob, haunted by his past and terrified by his impending encounter with his wronged brother Esau, found himself alone, vulnerable, and deeply afraid. The sacred text tells us he wrestled with a mysterious figure, later revealed to be God himself, through the long, arduous night until the first faint streaks of daybreak. And in the very crucible of that desperate, soul-wrenching struggle, Jacob uttered one of the most profound, stubborn, yet ultimately surrendered declarations in all of Scripture. He cried out, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Consider Jacob's entire life leading up to that moment, a relentless saga of striving, running from consequences, manipulating circumstances to his advantage, tirelessly building security and prosperity through his own cunning hands. The deep ingrained wound of comparison and devastating parental favoritism had taught him a bitter lesson. That blessing was not something freely given, an unmerited gift of grace. No, in his world, blessing was a prize you had to cunningly seize, a reward you had to earn through tireless effort and strategic maneuvering. And God, he engaged him in the struggle, wrestling with him through the long dark night, not as an adversary, but as a divine catalyst for transformation. And at the climactic moment, at the dawn of a new day, God did not reward Jacob's striving with more opportunity for self-reliance. He broke it. With a single divine touch, he struck Jacob's hip and dislocated it, rendering him physically unable to keep running on his own strength, unable to continue his relentless, self-determined striving. And it was in that moment of forced surrender, of profound physical vulnerability, limping and utterly undone, stripped of his self-reliance, that Jacob finally received his new divinely bestowed name, Israel, the one who wrestled with God and prevailed. Not because he physically won the wrestling match, not because he overpowered the divine, but precisely because he finally, irrevocably stopped running. He stopped running from his past, from his fear, and from the God who relentlessly pursued him. His prevailing came through surrender, through brokenness, through finally embracing the truth that he could not achieve what he desired in his own strength. Jacob's prevailing was not a moment of winning. It was a moment of finally stopping the striving that had defined his entire life. And right now, if you have been striving toward healing, the same way Jacob strived toward blessing, working harder, reading more, processing deeper, managing better, but never quite arriving. This moment in the message is not a coincidence. God met Jacob in the striving, not to reward it, but to break it open. Through the link in the description or the pinned comment, there is an act of release waiting for you, not a transaction, a surrender, a seed you can plant into this mission that says, with something real and tangible, I am done trying to achieve this in my own strength. A coffee, a one-time gift, a monthly place in the inner circle that keeps this word moving forward. What you are releasing is not money. It is the grip, the need to control the variables, the self-sufficient vow that has quietly been operating in the background of your healing for years. Bring with you the specific vow you know you made, the one that sounded like wisdom at the time, the version of never again or I will not need anyone that you recognize as yours. Hold it clearly as you open your hands, because the same God who met Jacob in the dark is not waiting for you to figure this out before he blesses you. He is already in the struggle with you, and the breakthrough is not on the other side of more striving. It is on the other side of this. And what is coming next, beloved, is the deep subterranean layer beneath even that, the very bedrock from which that vow draws its insidious oxygen, the wellspring that sustains its power, and precisely why you have been so utterly exhausted, so profoundly weary, in your sincere, but often fruitless attempts at healing. The powerful self-protective vow you made against ever needing anyone again, against vulnerability and interdependence, did not confine its pervasive influence solely to your horizontal relationships with other people. Oh no. On a deep soul level, that depending on anyone was simply too dangerous, too fraught with potential for pain and disappointment, that deeply ingrained belief did not stop its destructive work at the threshold of human love. It tragically leaked, seeped, and infused itself into the very way you approached the divine. You began, quite unconsciously, to relate to God through the same patterned lens of expectation, fear, and self-protection that you had learned to relate to her, your maternal figure. You found yourself performing for his approval, perpetually striving for spiritual perfection, convinced that your worthiness was tied to your deeds. You anxiously waited for him to withdraw his presence or his favor, mirroring the unpredictability you experienced. You felt perpetually unworthy of true divine rest, driven by an internal engine that demanded constant activity. You interpreted moments of divine delay or unanswered prayer as personal rejection, or even worse, as unequivocal abandonment, projecting your deepest fears onto the benevolent heart of God. And so tragically, even your profound faith, which was intrinsically meant to be the unwavering source of your deepest healing, Your ultimate refuge became filtered and distorted through the very same wound that desperately needed healing in the first place. You were in essence reading the boundless, unconditional nature of God through the narrow, often painful lens of her human limitations, her failures, her own unaddressed wounds. And let me be unequivocally clear, that is not the God of Scripture, the revealed, loving, compassionate Father. That is a false, distorted image, an idol built from the fractured fragments of human failure and your own pain. You unknowingly cast God in the image of your trauma. The true God, the one who majestically heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, does not heal conditionally, nor does he offer his love with caveats or performance clauses. He does not, under any circumstance, withdraw his loving presence when you struggle, when you falter, when you make mistakes, or when your faith wavers. He does not love you more when you meticulously perform your religious duties or achieve spiritual milestones. And he certainly does not love you less when you utterly fall apart, when your carefully constructed defenses crumble, and you find yourself in a heap of vulnerability and despair. Consider the timeless, heart-rending parable of the prodigal son recounted by Jesus in Luke 15. The father in that story, a profound illustration of God's heart, did not passively wait for his lost child to meticulously rehearse his speech of apology, to fully explain himself, or to prove his newfound repentance. No, the Scripture vividly portrays the Father's active, undeniable love. He saw his son while he was still a great way off, a mere speck on the distant horizon, probably dirty, smelling of pigs, and filled with shame. And what did the Father do? He ran. He ran with an undignified, unrestrained haste, casting aside cultural decorum, propelled by an immense unconditional love. That running, that passionate pursuit, happened before the son's carefully prepared speech could even be uttered. It happened before any apology was meticulously delivered. It happened before any outward repentance was thoroughly verified or deemed sufficient. The running, the embracing, the welcoming, all happened at the mere sight of the returning, at the first glimmer of his son's turning homeward. And that, my beloved friend, is precisely who God is toward you in this very moment. He is not waiting for you to become healed enough to somehow deserve his presence, his comfort, or his embrace. He is actively, passionately, relentlessly running toward you, even now in the very middle of your unraveling, in the very heart of your confusion, in the depths of your pain. He is pursuing you with a love that transcends all human limitations and expectations. If something just broke open in you when you heard that, if the image of the Father running while you were still a great way off landed somewhere specific inside your chest, type 1111 in the comments right now. 1111 is the number of divine alignment, the signal that heaven is coordinating something in your story that you cannot yet see in full. It is the mark of a moment when what has been in the heavenly realm is beginning to land in the earthly one. Type it now. Let this be the moment you mark. But let me challenge you with something profoundly uncomfortable, yet utterly essential, because this is often the direct confrontation that finally breaks the long-standing cycle wide open, allowing true liberation to rush in. You have undoubtedly been praying earnestly, even desperately, for healing. You have cried out to God for deliverance from your pain. But here is the piercing question that demands an honest, vulnerable answer. Have you truly been willing to grieve, not merely engaging in managed processing, not intellectualizing your emotions through clinical reflection, but embracing real, raw, unadulterated grief? The kind of grief that feels like an undeniable, agonizing loss, because fundamentally it is loss. It is the profound, aching loss of the mother you desperately needed, yearned for, and tragically did not have. It is the irretrievable loss of the childhood that should have been different. A tapestry woven with safety, unconditional love, and nurturing presence, rather than fear, or absence. It is the loss of the vibrant, unburdened version of you that might have existed, might have flourished, if the wound had never formed its indelible mark on your soul. Many people instinctively recoil from this depth of grief. They bypass it or suppress it because acknowledging such profound loss feels dangerously close to weakness and intolerable surrender. Or perhaps even more terrifying, grieving it truly means acknowledging with full measure how deeply, irrevocably it mattered, how fundamentally it shaped your very being. And acknowledging how deeply it mattered means admitting squarely and unflinchingly how much devastating power it actually had over you. But here is a spiritual truth. Ungrieved loss does not simply disappear into the ether. It does not dissipate or magically resolve itself. Instead, it moves. It subtly, insidiously relocates, embedding itself into the very fabric of your body, manifesting as inexplicable aches or chronic tension. It infiltrates your unconscious choices, dictating patterns you cannot seem to break. It settles into the inexplicable sadness that descends like an uninvited guest on days when, by all logical accounts, everything is technically fine, leaving you bewildered and drained. As Jesus himself proclaimed, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Matthew 5-4. This profound paradox reveals that comfort is found not in avoiding grief, but in fully embracing it. You absolutely cannot truly heal what you are unwilling or unable to mourn with the depth and honesty it demands. Stop here for just a moment. If what you just heard is naming something you have been bypassing, something you have been managing instead of truly feeling, type 333 in the comments right now. 333 means you are not alone in this. The grief you have been afraid to enter is not a place of no return. It is the threshold of the comfort that was promised. You do not have to grieve alone. Type it and let heaven be present with you in this. And the profound permission to mourn, to weep openly, to rage against the injustice of what was lost, is not a concession to weakness, nor is it a self-indulgent act. It is, in fact, an act of radical, courageous honesty before God, an unvarnished surrender of your brokenness into His compassionate, healing hands. What was just named, the permission to grieve, the permission to mourn what was lost without justifying or minimizing it, that permission is not just for you. There is someone who needs to hear it tonight, someone who has been holding their grief behind a wall of productivity, competence, and relentless forward motion, someone who has learned so well to be the strong one, the indispensable one, that they have almost forgotten they are also the wounded one, someone who will not give themselves permission to mourn unless they encounter a word that tells them mourning is not weakness. It is the door. This message exists to reach them. Through the link in the description or the pinned comment, you can sow into the mission that keeps this word moving forward. A coffee, a one-time gift, a monthly place in the inner circle of people who believe that root-level healing, not symptom management, is what this generation needs. As you plant this seed, bring with you the grief you have not yet allowed yourself to fully enter. Not the wound itself, but what the wound cost you, the childhood that should have been different, the version of you that might have flourished, the love you needed and did not receive. Hold it, and instead of managing it one more time, release it into this act of letting go, because grief and surrender share the same motion. Both require you to stop holding the wound closed, and finally let it be seen. You cannot truly heal what you are unwilling to mourn, and you are not as far from mourning as the wall has made it feel. And here is the final, most surprising revelation. The truth that often catches people completely off guard because it challenges the very foundation of their self-perception. The thing that has been, perhaps unknowingly, blocking your deepest, most profound breakthrough, the ultimate liberation you seek, is not merely the wound itself. It is not even the powerful, self-protective vow you made against vulnerability. You have been living as the wounded one, wearing that label, inhabiting that role for such an incredibly long time that somewhere deep beneath your conscious desire to be free, there exists a subtle, unconscious part of you that genuinely does not know who you are, or even how to be without the familiar framework of the wound. The wound, over years, became much more than an injury. It became a comprehensive framework, a default lens through which you interpreted every interaction, every setback, every success. It explained everything about your life, giving structure to your anxieties and patterns. It often justified certain self-protective choices, providing a convenient rationale for pulling away. It subtly excused certain emotional walls you erected, making them seem entirely reasonable and necessary. And crucially, it gave you a ready-made language, a convincing narrative for why intimacy feels so impossibly hard, why trust is such a complicated, perilous endeavor, and why full, vulnerable surrender to anyone, including God, feels utterly dangerous and reckless. And so, the most confronting, yet ultimately liberating question you will face in this sacred season of profound healing is not merely what happened to you, what past trauma shaped your present reality. No, the truly transformative question, the one that unlocks everything, is who are you without it? Because true freedom is not merely or even primarily the passive removal of pain, the absence of suffering, or the eradication of discomfort. Freedom in its deepest spiritual sense is the active, courageous construction of a new identity, a glorious self forged in the radiant absence of the very thing that once defined, constrained, and limited you. And that transformative work, that intentional self-recreation, requires a depth of courage, a ferocity of spirit far greater than merely surviving the original wound ever did. It is, paradoxically, easier, more familiar, and less confronting to remain a person who is diligently healing from something, a continuous process with an understandable role to play, than to fully become a person who has been healed. A complete integrated arrival that necessitates a profound sense of spiritual responsibility for stewarding that newfound wholeness. This is the chrysalis moment where the old form, however familiar, must be shed for the new, even if the new feels initially frightening and unknown. But understand this, for it is the culmination of God's relentless, loving pursuit. This is precisely what God has been orchestrating, subtly building toward, in every hard season you have endured, in every surfacing memory that brought a fresh wave of grief, in every recurring pattern that came back around for one final, undeniable look. He has not been showing you the raw, agonizing wound to simply remind you of your damage, to shame you, or to cement your identity as a victim. On the contrary, he has been revealing the deep, hidden root of it all so that you can stand fully present and ready to watch him, your divine healer, pull it out by hand, a meticulous, surgical act of love. And what will gloriously grow, what will spontaneously flourish in the now vacant space where that insidious root once lived, is not merely the blessed absence of pain, not simply a void where suffering used to reside. No, in that hallowed, fertile ground, there will blossom the radiant fullness of your divine purpose. It is the emergence of the unburdened version of you, the authentic self, the one whose very being will inspire and shape your children, or the generations that follow you, in profoundly healthier, more loving ways. It is the version of you that, having walked through the valley of the shadow and emerged into the light, will be able to reach back a compassionate hand to someone else standing exactly where you are standing right now, confused, wounded, yearning for freedom, and say with unshakable conviction, I know precisely where you are, and I know the way through because I walked it, and God walked it with me. This is your legacy, your testament, your divine assignment. This, beloved, is the turning point. Not someday, not in some distant, idealized future, when all the stars align perfectly and you feel fully ready. No, it is happening by divine invitation right now, in this very moment. Place your hand gently, reverently on your heart and declare this truth, these powerful affirmations, with me, letting them resonate deep within your spirit. I release the verdict I mistakenly handed down against myself in the profound silence of the wound, renouncing its power and authority over my inner world. I release the vow, that unconscious spiritual contract I made against needing, against trusting, against being fully known, breaking its chains and choosing vulnerability. I release the heavy burden of grief I have been managing and suppressing, choosing instead to fully and authentically mourn what was lost, trusting God with my tears. I release the identity I inadvertently built inside the story of my pain, choosing to step out of that familiar narrative and into my true, divinely given essence. I affirm with every fiber of my being that I am not what happened to me. I am not defined by my past. I am not the limiting conclusions I formed in the dark, nor am I bound by them. I am not the absence of what I needed and tragically did not receive. My worth is not measured by lack. Instead, I declare that I am the one the Most High God, in His infinite, relentless love, has pursued across every winding detour, through every painful breakdown. I receive fully and unconditionally profound healing in the deepest layer of my being, not merely on the surface, not simply addressing the symptoms, but precisely at the very root of my wound. I receive the true sacred name God has been speaking over me, affirming my divine identity since before I was even formed in my mother's womb. I receive love that is unwavering, steadfast, and does not ever withdraw, embracing its boundless, unconditional nature. I receive rest that does not demand performance, a Sabbath for my soul, trusting in His grace alone. I consciously and courageously step into the glorious version of myself that intrinsically exists on the other side of this moment of profound transformation, healed, truly whole, deeply known by God and self, and gloriously free. This freedom is not coming in the future. It is not a distant promise. It is here. It is now. And I walk forward, bold and unburdened, into this new reality right now. If that declaration just broke something open in you, if even one line of it felt like permission you have been waiting to receive, type in the comments right now, I release, I receive, I am free. Type the whole thing. Let it be the first time your mouth says out loud what your spirit has been reaching toward this entire message. Because what you declare in faith, heaven moves to confirm in reality. If this powerful message broke something open in you today, if it resonated deeply with your spirit, do not let it end here, in this moment of revelation. Share it widely with someone who desperately needs to hear these truths, someone who is also walking this difficult path. Leave a comment below and tell me what shifted within you, what truth illuminated your path. Your honest words may be the precise confirmation or inspiration that keeps someone else from clicking away, from giving up on their own healing journey. And if you want to go even deeper, to truly understand your unique calling, to unravel the intricate patterns that have held you back, and to discern what God is powerfully activating in this specific season of your life, everything you need, a comprehensive roadmap and profound resources, is waiting for you in the first pinned comment below. Subscribe to this channel so that the next message knows exactly where to find you. Not for the algorithm, because you were led here once, and there is more of this word with your name on it. The healing that began tonight does not stop at the end of this video. Let the next one find you. This is not the end of the message. This, my friend, is the glorious beginning of a transformative movement within you and through you.